Okay, I'm gonna stop the share and play. You believe in freedom cannot rest. You believe in freedom. Can you hear the music?
It was coming and gone.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you hear it now?
Yeah.
Now.
Okay. We'll believe in freedom cannot rest. You believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. We'll believe in freedom cannot rest. Hear me talking to you. We'll believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Until the killing of black men, black mother sons, is as important as the killing of white men, white mother sons. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. Sing it with me if you like it. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. The older I get, the better I know that the secret of my going on is when the reins are in the hands of the young who dare to run against the storm. Cause to me, young people come first. They have the courage where we fail. And if I can but shed some light as they carry us through the gales, we who believe in freedom cannot rest. Hear me talking to you. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Then struggling myself don't mean a whole lot. I've come to realize. Hi, Doc, and welcome to you, Dr. Deborah. Just wanted to let you know, Doc, that we're going to be live streaming this to ICNY's Facebook. So I'll share and try to tag it, and you can share it on your timeline. Do you have any objections to that?
None at all, none at all.
Okay, and I'm going to move Pastor Mike.
Hi, pastors.
Panelists. Okay, so we have everyone here. Welcome, Pastor Mike. And I was just telling everyone, Pastor Mike, that we're going to stream this to the Interfaith Center of New York's Facebook, and then I'll tag you all in it, and you can share it and as well. So okay, and thank you for being on with us. And so we're just going to play some music until 4 o'clock, and then we'll start the live stream and get started.
Okay, awesome.
Hi, Deborah. Hi, Pastor Mike.
Hi, everybody. How are you?
Hi, Doc.
I like your shirt, Pastor Mike.
I'm just trying to blend in with the one voice, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's nice. Okay.
I'm
going to see if I can change my background.
I'm a woman who speaks in a voice, and I must be heard. At times I can be quite difficult about no man's word. We believe in freedom and I rest. Hear me talking to you. We believe in freedom and I rest until not needing to clutch for power, not needing the light just to shine. All in silence.
Lehano diri kiratikala, ene shabati nakabe. Hadi bushimo ehadi, ishemi buriti pareti buritu hiram. Lehano diri kiratikala, ene shabati nakavera. Lehano diri kiratikala, ene shabati nakavera. Nikirati shabati lehubuni leha. Iji megori haburaha, mirashimi kedemu nasuha, sofa maase bemeha sofa tuhira. Lehano diri kiratikala, ene shabati nakavera. Lehano diri kiratikala, ene shabati nakavera. Mikuna shimereha irumeruha, umize imitoha hafeha. Raburaha shebeti ba eleji habaha, behuya hamolu aleiha emilam. Lehano diri kiratikala, ene shabati nakavera. Lehano diri kiratikala, ene shabati nakavera. Iti narimi afarukumi, livishi bigide iti farute haami. Aluyadi beni shaideti harahami, kaluba eri nakushigala. Lehano diri kiratikala, ene shabati nakavera. Lehano diri kiratikala, ene shabati nakavera. Iti urari, kibo ureha. Abodi Adonai Alai Hanigala Ehadodi Likiratikala Ene Shabati Nakavela Lehadodi Likiratikala Ene Shabati Nakavela Loti Bashivuloti Harumi Matisto Ahivu Mate Tahaya Suana Yeyami Eni Gunuta Ilu Arutira Lehadodi Likiratikala Ene Shabati Nakavela Lehadodi Likiratikala Ene Shabati Nakavela Vehayulani Sisasha Osaiha Veraha Hukolu Megolaiha Yemisianaiha Eloheiha Kemisosikatani Alukala Lehadodi Likiratikala Ene Shabati
You're muted, Onleilove.
Thank you so much. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Minister Onleilove Chika Alston. Sorry about that. And I'm with the Interfaith Center of New York and the faith-based coordinator for the Global African Business Association, two of the sponsors for today. And we want to welcome you to the second annual CBC Week One Voice Faith Town Hall, and we truly appreciate you being with us today. And I just want to give a little history of One Voice. And so One Voice is an initiative of the Global African Business Association and the Nigerian American Public Affairs Committee. And what we would do is annually during CBC Week, we would award a member of the Congressional Black Caucus with an award for their work with the African community in America. Last year, due to the pandemic, we took the programming online with various workshops, and we are again having this workshop virtually. So CBC One Voice is a couple of years old, but this is our second year partnering with the Black Church PAC and really bringing a faith town hall where we can hear from Black faith leaders from Africa, from the diaspora, from different faith traditions about the pressing political needs for our community and why we need to unite worldwide. And so we truly appreciate everyone being here today. And we want to give you a hearty welcome and remind you that this is being streamed on the Interfaith Center of New York's Facebook page. And so if you want to share it, you can do so as well. And I want to turn it over to Pastor Michael McBride from Black Church PAC, one of the founders of Black Church PAC and a longtime colleague of mine in organizing, doing powerful anti-incarceration and cure violence work all across the country and really doing innovative work with Black Church PAC. And so Pastor Mike, help welcome the people, and thank you so much for being there today.
Well, as always, it's such a blessing to be together. We are in some of the most perilous moments of literally our history. And if there has ever been an institution that has been present in Black communities across the diaspora, it has been our religious communities, our institutional communities of faith and hope and healing that have reminded us that there is a power greater than the wickedness and the machinations of our governments, of our systems, of those powers in this world that would seek to literally steal our hopes, our dreams, our children, our families, our loved ones from us. So on this very sacred day and moment where we gather across the time and place, across continent, geographies, across faith traditions, across religious traditions, I count it a privilege to be able, on behalf of the Black Church PAC and so many others, I find it a privilege to be able to ensure that we are building some power, some clarity, and some synergy around responding to the worst conditions of our communities, both here in the United States and certainly across the diaspora. I was told by Elder when I visited the region, Pretoria region in South Africa, I was telling him, I want to move here to the continent. He said, "Oh, you can't come yet. It's too early." He said, "You in the belly of the beast over there in the United States. And what y'all doing over there has such a great impact on Africans all across the world." And he took a little wind out of my sails. That was pre-Obama and everything. And I now understand this to be true, that we are one people connected all across the country, all across the world, across the continents. And we must learn to speak with one voice, a voice that is about justice, a voice that is about equity, a voice that is about tearing down the hierarchies and all the different modalities that literally erase the image of God within all of us. So very glad to be here. Excited to be partnering with One Voice again. Thank you, Minister Onleilove, for your persistence and your commitment to bringing us together. And I'm looking forward to a great conversation.
Thank you so much, Pastor Mike. And we'll be letting everyone know how they can connect with Black Church PAC and all the sponsors. I do want to greet the president of GABA, Global African Business Association, Akindele. I want to greet everyone who is on, Pastor Renice, and just everyone who is watching on Facebook. And so before we get started, though, we are leaders rooted in our faith. And so my Daughters for Justice sister, I call her Doc, but her name is Dr. Deborah Jenkins. She is going to open us up in prayer, and then we will get started. So thank you, Doc.
Thank you. Thank you. Most High God, we thank you for assembling us here together today. We thank you for the diversity that fills this panel, from a Buddhist brother to an Islamic brother, to a Christian brother, and to acknowledging, affirming biblical Hebrew sisters, and all those who would join us today. We say thank you, Most High, for revealing your way, your word, and your truth in all of us in the way that only you can do it. Now we ask that you would undergird the entire length of this program, that there might be fruit gathered that may be distributed amongst the people, that their bellies may be full of truth. It is in the name of Jesus Christ I do pray on behalf of all assembled. Amen.
Amen. And so, family, this year, as last year, we wanted to have diversity. We do have a short period of time, and so it's a little bit difficult to get all the diversity that we want. This is only a very small sliver of the full diversity of the African diaspora. But today we're going to be honing in on the attack on Black voting rights and what our Black immigrant brothers and sisters need at this time. And those things are very much intertwined. And we can't begin to work together until we understand each other. And so this is also a part of our reconciliation work. You know, those of us who prescribe to the New Testament, we know that Apostle Paul talks about us being ministers of reconciliation. But I always say, how can Black people reconcile with others when they have not reconciled with the image in the mirror? They have not reconciled with their brother and sister, but yet we're trying to reconcile with other communities. That's out of order. It starts first in the house. And then once you are reconciled with your brothers and sisters and have your self-esteem healed and affirmed, you can reconcile with others. And so with no further ado, we will get started with the panel. And I just want to take a moment to introduce our panelists. And I want to thank each and every panelist for joining us today. I want to thank our co-sponsors, GABA, Nigerian American Public Affairs Committee, Black Church PAC, the Interfaith Center of New York, and each of you who are on. So I want to introduce Pastor Michael McBride, known by most of us as Pastor Mike. He's a native of San Francisco, and he's been active in ministry for over 20 years. Pastor McBride has a commitment to holistic ministry, which can be seen through his leadership role in both the church and the community. He graduated from Duke University's Divinity School, but I'll forgive him as a Tar Heel fan. But all jokes aside, he founded the Way Christian Center in West Berkeley. And in 2012, he became the director for the Live Free campaign with Faith in Action, a campaign led by hundreds of faith congregations throughout the United States committed to addressing gun violence and mass incarceration of young people of color. And as someone who's organized for about 13 years, the Live Free campaign is one of my favorite campaigns that I've ever worked on. He is one of the national leaders in the movement to implement public health and community-centered gun violence prevention programs, which have contributed to a 50% reduction of gun-related homicides in Oakland and other cities across the country. He also co-founded the Community Justice Reform Coalition and the National Black-Brown Gun Violence Prevention Consortium. Regarded as a national faith leader active in the Ferguson uprisings and many subsequent uprisings, he helped bridge, train, and support millennials and religious institutions working on racial justice and Black liberation. Pastor McBride has served on a number of local and national task forces with the White House and Department of Justice regarding gun violence prevention, boys and men of color, and police and community relationships. In 2016, he was appointed as advisor on President Obama's Faith-Based Advisory Council for Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships. He's also contributed to the New York Times, the Washington Post, MSNBC, CNN, the Huffington Post, and many other media outlets. He's married to the beautiful and brilliant Sharice McBride, and they have 2 beautiful daughters. And thank you so much, Pastor McBride, for all you do for Yahweh's people and for the community. And I want to introduce next, Baki Thom, who is not only my neighbor, but he did marry one of my best friends who used to work with Pastor Mike McBride doing cure violence work in Sacramento, Danielle. And Baki hails from Senegal, and he is involved in many different organizations, including the Sufi Morad community, which is a Senegalese Muslim community. He is also a National Leadership Council member for UndocuBlack. And he was born in Pekin, Senegal. And he grew up in a neighborhood where the rate of illiteracy was very high. Yet he managed to graduate from Sheikh Anta Diop University with a master's degree in English. After coming to the US to further his education, he worked odd jobs in restaurants and witnessed the struggle firsthand of African immigrants in the US. This propelled Baki into the world of advocacy and organizing, where he was a facilitator with the UndocuBlack Network's Alive and Well program. As a facilitator, he hosted mental wellness dialogues that helped undocumented African immigrants manage the stressful changes of immigration policies and to know their rights. Baki volunteered as a community guardian for African Communities Together on a program for neighborhood defense and rapid response, and then he worked for them in census outreach. Additionally, he would report immigration news weekly or bi-weekly on Senegalese WPAT radio. Currently, he is the vice president of the Ndodawa Serene Touba, the Senegalese youth leadership of the Murad Islamic community in the US. And the founder of the Murads in Senegal was the first person in history to lead a nonviolent civil disobedience movement in the 1800s. Yes, before Gandhi, there was a Senegalese man that led a nonviolent movement against the French, and I learned that from Baki. He is a French bilingual community organizer at Harlem Children's Zone and also a member of the National Leadership Council at UndocuBlack. Reverend James Lynch is the president of the Buddhist Council of New York. and he also is active in the Interfaith Center of New York. Reverend James Lynch Esquire is a Dharma teacher as authorized by the lay Buddhist organization Rasho Kosai Kai. He is an official representative for their outside affairs in New York City, as well as an official representative for the organization to the United Nations. Reverend James is currently the president of the Buddhist Council of New York, which represents more than 950,000 Buddhists in the tri-state area. In addition, he has helped organize the Hawa Peace Foundation Think Tank for Peace, whose primary work is done in the United States and Asia on behalf of its founder, the Venerable T.K. Nakasaki. He further sits on the Board of Religions for Peace USA, which is the largest interfaith peace organization in America, and he was recently appointed as trustee to the prestigious International Parliament of World Religions. James is also a lawyer and tenured professor, as well as the chairman of business management in the Koppel School of Business, located at Brooklyn College, where he teaches workplace happiness and spirituality. And thank you, Reverend James, for all you do. Dr. Deborah D. Jenkins is the pastor at Faith at Work Christian Church. She is also the founder. She is one of the co-founders of Daughters for Justice, which is a women's interfaith clergy group here in New York City that is dedicated to radically changing the NYPD. She is also the CEO of Sable Network TV. Reverend Dr. Deborah D. Jenkins is known as the Chief Social Justice Officer because her work covers all that she does as a pastor to her Messiah-centered and family-focused church, as a community leader and organizer around issues of injustice, whether from without or within, as an activist advocate in the manner of Fannie Lou Hamer, and as a restorative justice specialist. She pastors Faith at Work Christian Church in Co-op City, Bronx. She is also the founder of Daughters for Justice, an interfaith women's clergy group dedicated to radically changing the NYPD. She has spent her entire adult life seeking to ensure that the rights of the Black community are preserved by forging valuable relationships with community leaders, stakeholders, government agencies, particularly the NYPD, and elected officials. She understands that as Christ led for liberation of his people, she must also. She's a 3-time author and contributor to the groundbreaking work about Sojourner Truth, and an academic professor, having taught at the College of New Rochelle, New York Theological Seminary, and currently at Manhattan College. She also recently founded Sable Network TV, a Black-owned television network. She is married and a mother of 2, and I am so grateful to labor in the vineyard with Dr. Deborah. So welcome all of our panelists, and now we're going to hop right into the discussion, and we appreciate all of you. So this is a question for all panelists, and you have up to 2 minutes to answer. Please stay on time. I want you all to briefly tell everyone about your personal faith tradition and why your faith as a Black leader urges you to be politically engaged during these difficult times. So take 1 to 2 minutes for that, and we will get started with Dr. Deborah.
Well, again, thank you so much for having me and the opportunity to share a panel with all of these awesome leaders. In the interest of time, I won't go through all of the platitudes usually, given to those who I hold in respect, like your panelists, but I'll try to step right into the answer by saying, having been born and raised in Montgomery, Alabama, the home of the civil rights movement, birth, actually, it's really as much a part of your faith to be involved politically, having come from that, and being raised in the truth, beginning with the Montgomery bus boycott, of which my mother and my grandmother were integral parts of the boycott themselves. And it just is necessary to have a political lens that is also connected to one's faith lens. And that's why it's so important for me in the Baptist tradition having been raised in that tradition, to continue to be involved, to continue to push for equity, not equality. Equality was always a misnomer in the movement. It continues to be, and therefore I stand up as one who is fighting for equity, which I believe is going to be a harder fought battle than the notion of equality, but yet we continue on, and that is why I do what I do in all spheres. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doc. We appreciate it. And now we're going to go to Pastor Mike McBride. And sorry.
Well,
Pastor.
I think it's
Yes.
just it's always important for us to remind ourselves of a couple of things. Number one, all of our traditions teach us to be good stewards, caretakers of creation, to be individuals who, honor the divine, to embrace and love our neighbor, and whenever possible, to right wrongs. Now, as a faith leader, if my ministry is about helping to care for the soul and the body of those left in my charge, I cannot just speak to their spiritual being without also attending to their physical needs and environments. The Black church tradition that has been grounded in a primarily Christian kind of identity, but certainly has been from its inception multi-faith, right? Whether it was acknowledged as such, right? We had no choice but to use the institutions that gave birth to us as a catalyst for ensuring we right wrongs and expand the circle of belonging. And so the faithful among us must continue to not only answer this question, but also ask the question, why are we not doing more, given the state of affairs of the diaspora in this world? We are the original people of the earth. We ought not be the last within the earth. And so it is our responsibility with these institutions we are left to charge, and certainly with the people that we minister to and provide spiritual, economic, emotional, psychological, and communal support to. We must respond, and that's hopefully a faithful response as well.
Thank you so much, Pastor Mike. And before we go to Reverend James Lynch with the same question, we are dropping the links for the organizations and speakers in the chat. And also you can ask your question with the Q&A function on Zoom or in the chat. We will have time for Q&A. So Pastor James, Reverend James, let us know how your faith contributes to your justice work. Thank you. Oh, Pastor James, you're muted. Sorry about that.
I want to annoy people in that background.
Yes.
Now. Again, I want to say thank you to everybody for having me here. I wanted to thank Pastor Jenkins and Pastor McBride for what they just said. I would think as a Buddhist practitioner, a lot of people may not know what Buddhism path is. The idea is not to worship the Buddha. So that's the first thing that people need to know. The idea is to recognize that there's a divine presence that's moving through and around us at all times. And that the only moment that we should be focused on that we can really control is right now, right here. And so as a Black person, when I was growing up in the 70s, the urgency of now, the fierce urgency of now always rang true to me. And that if we're not taking care of our community, the people who raised us, who we are a continuation of our ancestors, then we're actually disparaging them and the sacrifices that they made on our behalf. Pastor Jenkins had mentioned coming from Montgomery, Alabama, my great-grandparents were slaves in the United States, and they had to make that battle real, but at the same time, they were always saying to live with joy, justice, and I love the term equity that we heard earlier. So I think being a Buddhist requires me to act always on behalf of those who are suffering, because that is the primary responsibility of a Buddhist, to remove the suffering wherever you see it, regardless of what it looks like to you. All right. And so with that, I'll leave it there. The idea of the Buddhist is to remove suffering when you see it. And no one has suffered more than Black people in the United States and around the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Reverend Lynch. Thank you. And thank you for the education. And so now we're going to bring, Doc back, as I lovingly call her, Dr. Deborah Jenkins. And we want to just ask you, Doc, this is a very critical question for all of us that are participating and listening. Black voting rights are under attack, and Black Church PAC, led the way in equipping Black churches with All Souls to the polls, gospel concerts at the polls, food, beverages. I mean, just unique ways to get our people out to vote. And now some of those items those actions are under attack. And so, Dr. Deborah, I know you were very involved in the New York City mayoral election, educating people on ranked choice voting. You're very civically engaged. And so I want to ask you, as a Black woman pastor, we know that Black voting rights are under attack. So what is the reason for this, and why should Black houses of faith be concerned?
Thank you again for the question and being here. So it's not a mystery that the European descent or white population in this nation is dwindling. And I think back to when former Attorney General Eric Holder left office. He committed himself fully to the idea about the redistricting, the voter right assault that we are now living under, because he saw ahead what so many of us failed to see. We're people of the moment, and but thank God for an Eric Holder, right, who combined his efforts with the former President Barack Obama as well. There's a fear amongst Caucasians of their dwindling population, which is equitable to authority and power. If you have fewer people, then you have fewer or less authority over the masses. And this is a fear that was fostered even more during the last 4 years under the former president. And so what is happening now, specifically in a state like Georgia, and throughout the country, they are enacting rules at the state level, laws at the state level that will make it more difficult for people to get out to the polls. But see, I'm of the Bayard Rustin camp. He worked behind the scenes. So while we have the excellent work of the Black Church PAC, we have to have people like me behind the scenes saying to people, listen, don't use up all of your vacation days before the election runs around. If you're unable to get to the polls when they say you must now, with these oppressive laws that they've enacted, you take off time so that you can. But the work still has to continue in the forefront for us to stop it. But I am disappointed, like many people are, with the Democratic Party having the White House in both arms of the legislative houses, and they're not being more proactive. And that is a real problem, because if they don't use this power that is quite limited to right these wrongs right now, before we enter into 2022, we are going to be headed into some very critical times for Blacks and other minorities in this country. So it is very important, the work that the Black Church PAC does, but it's also important for those of us who are underground in other ways to keep pushing the message, get out and vote, even if that means you losing time from work.
Thank you so much, Doc. Thank you so much. Those were excellent comments, and we have to be very clear. Like the tribe of Issachar, you have to know the times and what we should do, as a Black faith leader. And so, Reverend James Lynch, not only are you the president of the Buddhist Council of New York, but you're also a lawyer. You even defended members of my faith community, and so which we're grateful for. And so I wanted to know, what are some legal steps that we can take to protect Black voter rights?
Okay, thank you so much for that beautiful question. First, I wanted to say, I'm writing down notes as I'm listening to the speakers too. I like to listen as well. I think what I just heard too is think strategically. First and foremost, we must be diligent in working to be ever vigilant concerning the voter suppression efforts, the gerrymandering our votes, and we must be aware of the laws in the local areas as well as the national laws that are present to protect us from retroactive policies. That's what came to my mind as I wrote it down, right? That in fact, those retroactive policies are designed to thwart Black and Brown empowerment in a way is to suck out our souls. That's the way I would use it, right? So we need to know what the laws are in those various areas, and also mindful that the laws that are on the books, whether it be done by Democrats or Republicans or whomever else, are man-made laws. And so we must be mindful that while voting is a necessary but not sufficient condition for the improvement of our condition of our people, right? And so we need to understand the genesis of how those laws got into place. For example, when I became a lawyer in 1994, a long time ago now, but when I first came out, the reason why I went to law school was in fact because what was on the books or what was being proposed at that time was more draconian laws against Black and Brown people with regards to drug and incarceration at that time. Nobody was talking about it like that now. Now, 20 years later, we have people in prison and incarcerated in that same way. And what happens is we don't understand that, for example, prison reform is also a voting issue. Why is it? Because what is happening is many communities have made their monies and on the backs of Black and Brown people being incarcerated. They thereby get federal dollars. They vote for those people, but the people who've been incarcerated don't have the right to vote or they lose their right to vote. So we have to think strategically about the laws that are in place and organize ourselves in a way that is comprehensive about those laws. What do I mean by that? You need to have people on the ground. You need to have people working in the legislature. That's why things like the Black Church PAC are so empowering, because you can link those sometimes disparate forces together so that they can have a single voice and so they can actively affect real change. That's what I want to say.
Thank you so much, Reverend Lynch. And though that was a lot of wisdom, think strategically. And so, Reverend McBride, I alluded to the great work Black Church PAC has been doing, and Black Church PAC was very key in creating initiatives such as All Souls to the Polls, where Black churches provided rides to vote and even snacks for voters waiting in line. And then in Georgia, these initiatives became something to be attacked. So why are initiatives like All Souls to the Polls seen as a threat? And why should more Black faith communities participate in these types of efforts? So I'll turn it over to you, Pastor.
I think it's a fact that Black religious communities, particularly Black churches in the South, for sure, were the engines of democratic participation in our country's history. And so whenever the white supremacist forces of this country wanted to attack Black power building, they would bomb a Black church. Now, it didn't matter if every Black person in that town went to that Black church. They understood that bombing a Black church would send a certain signal to Black people about the political threat that they were becoming. And so I think it's really important for us to remind ourselves that we're now dealing with Jim Crow, Jane Crow 3.0, where their sophistication in how they are systemically attempting to exclude us from stewarding this country, which by extension would literally help us to more faithfully steward all of creation. They want to limit our ability to gather and to teach and to train and to make sure people have the right information so they can take their soul to the poll and make an informed decision. And so we believe that it's critically important for us to never lose sight of the power of Black religious institutions, whether they be churches, whether they be universities and colleges, whether they be a legacy organizations, civil rights organizations, or affinity groups, spin-ups, entrepreneur, whatever groups you're a part of. We have institutional power that allows us to influence and determine the conditions by which Black folk that we may not even know have to navigate day to day. So it has been the responsibility of the Black Church PAC to ensure that our denominations, our faith leaders, our clergy, our artists and entertainers who are grounded in Black Christian traditions are always aware of how they can have an easy pathway to leverage their influence and thus make it easier for others then to get them the information that they need. We ought not be surprised that the forces of white supremacy and Christian nationalism are attempting to push back against the browning and the blackening of this country. But I just tell folks, all we doing is we getting back to eating. We getting back to a time, where this is what the world was like.
Yes.
And it is our religious traditions that will keep that memory alive and prayerfully accelerate it and make it so.
Thank you so much, Pastor Mike. Back to Eden. And so, Pastor Mike, a bonus question. I'm a part of a branch of Redeemed Christian Church of God, one of the largest Nigerian Pentecostal groups. We have a branch out in Oakland. Can I get involved in Black Church PAC, even though it's not an African American denomination?
The Black Church PAC has this operating theory: whosoever will, let them come. It's an open table. And we have to be willing, though, at this table to sit with folks that we may not always agree with. We may not share their same theological or Christological or religious or notions around gender and sexuality and political kind of sensibilities. I mean, it really is an open table. Now, we do ensure that we are explicit about the kind of candidates that we want to promote, and that those are candidates who are not aligning with the forces of Christian nationalism and white supremacy. And so it's an open table. We love to have folks from the Redeemed there. I've fellowship with a few folks myself from the great Redeemed Church. And so yes, please, let's rock together. Let's build together, everybody. And even if you're not a Christian, I want you to know, I know it says Black Church PAC, but if you're not a Christian, we will help you use the tools of the Black Church PAC to uniquely reach your religious tradition. We can brand it differently because these are all tools. I just want you to understand, underneath the hood of the Black Church PAC, it ain't nothing but a bunch of tools. And so we have communications support, we have graphic artists, we have text tools, we have phone banking tools, all these that are intended to help us activate Black religious people to political participation, as Pastor James said, which is one part, but it is a necessary part.
Thank you, Pastor. So to my Messianic Hebrew friends, to my Black Jewish friends, you can connect with the Black Church PAC and utilize the tools. To my African Muslim friends, you can connect. To my Redeemed people, to to our Black Buddhist people, you can connect. And the Black Church PAC is very easy to work with and gives a lot of trainings. You want to set up a French-speaking phone bank to reach Haitian and Francophone country voters, they will help you do that. And we dropped in the chat the Black Church PAC info. So thank you, Pastor Mike. And now we're going to come to Brother Baki. And so, Brother Baki, we're talking about some critical stuff right now with the voting rights. And many people may think, well, I'm not from America. The way the voting goes has nothing to do with me. But firsthand what our immigrant brothers and sisters go through. You came here from Senegal, and now you organize with Black immigrant family. So what should all Black people of faith be doing during this time to support immigration reform for our Black immigrant brothers and sisters? What should we be doing, whether we're from Africa, whether we're from America, whether we're from the Caribbean? What should we as Blacks of faith be doing to support immigration reform and our Black immigrant brothers and sisters? Thank you, Baki.
Thank you so much, Onleilove, for the question. I want you to also to thank you for having me. And also, it's a great pleasure for me to share this panel with all the panelists, and also have the opportunity to share my experience as an immigrant, also how I see that we can move forward politically and impact our community. So like you were saying, as a large number of organizations, especially religious organizations, are considered as non-profit and non-political, and like they are taken away from the rights of developing a political access and also advocate for themselves. That's why they like if you're a religious leader, you are mostly focused on preaching about God and bringing people into the faith and the belief. However, it's part and partial to build a stronger community that defends themselves, and it's part also and partial of it to know what the law is, because we have seen that when Trump became president, there is a large number of law that was legislated, and also that means we have to be ready to advocate for ourselves. And sometimes it doesn't require to be a lawyer in order to change the law. However, it requires to know also who is your elite, who is your officials, who are your representative, and who to call. Let's say if I live at my zip code is 10030, I should know who is my district council member, who also my Senate representative, who also my House representative, and who also who represent me at the Senate and at the federal level. So all this, if they receive phone calls and saying that this is what's happening, we need to pass this bill, that bill will end up to be heard at the House, and hopefully it's gonna pass. And that's what we have been doing in a large number of legislation, especially regarding to immigrants. And we have all have known that the pathway to citizenship has been in the House of Representatives, and it was rejected. And right now it passes the House and it passed also the Senate. I think there is still a lot of work we have to do. And also, like you're saying, how they're trying to take the voting rights for Black and Brown community. Also, it requires work, and I think and believe that religious leaders, regardless of Muslim or Buddhist or Christian, they need to step up so they can be heard, and also their community can be taken care.
Thank you so much, Baki. And just to follow up, you mentioned legislation around immigration. Can you clarify that again? So
yes. Sorry about that. Yeah, I mentioned the pathway to citizenship, which is legislation that's coming up, and hopefully it's gonna come through, and which will help people who are undocumented but who have like TPS, which is temporary protected status, and also who have maybe DACA, deferred action for childhood arrival, which for people who came here as a child, which is also a temporary status. People think if you have it, you can travel, but you are not safe into, leaving the USA and coming back safely is not guaranteed. So there are many also status, including asylum, who are, essential workers or farmer workers. So hopefully they will take advantage of it and adjust their status into a way that will help them to have a permanent residence, maybe up to a green card. That's what we call pathway to citizenship. And immigrants and community organizers and leaders have been fighting on it, and up to having it at the federal level.
thank you so much, Baki, and thank you for your work. And I want to say to our undocumented brothers and sisters, you can encourage other people to vote. Also to our brothers and sisters who have been disenfranchised because they have felonies, you can encourage others to vote. You can drive others to vote. You can help others register to vote. You can remind them of voting. We're going to fight for you to be able to vote. But until then, you can play a role by turning out your brothers and sisters to vote. So there were many African led phone banks from NAPAC and other organizations for the Ralph Warnock, the Senator Warnock race. And so we all have a role to play. So thank you, Baki. And so Dr. Deborah, I just wanted to ask you, together we co-founded Daughters for Justice, which is a New York City women's clergy group dedicated to radically changing policing in New York City. And we were able to get over 40 women faith leaders to meet with the commissioner, Chief Jeffrey Madry and other high brass, while also helping to implement some changes. And you are also a clergy liaison for the NYPD. But I've been in meetings with you and you challenge the NYPD to be more just. You do not hold back. Right. And so how can Black faith leaders get involved in police accountability and reform in their community without compromising on the justice we need?
Yeah, I tell you, Pastor Lynch and I are very intricately involved, as you are, with the NYPD in this regard. And he can probably attest, as well as you, to the current configuration of those of us who are involved, many of whom are Black faith leaders. There is a notion, I believe, with faith leaders that says that if I'm invited to the table, then I must be overly grateful for the invitation. And that's just wrong thinking. I'm of the old school. I believe faith informs our actions. And so if we attempt to become involved in such enterprises as the NYPD, which truly needs a lot of guidance from the faith community, we can't get to the table and then begin to stroke egos. We have to truly represent those who have sent us there. And that is the greater community. It's not necessarily our local community. And so to me, there has to be even strategy around those leaders becoming involved, those church leaders becoming involved, or faith leaders, because it's really not for everyone. If you're not there to force change sometimes, then really, why are you there? And it's so sad to me, because many people in their local congregations, whatever the faith may be, are unaware that they're being misrepresented at these high-level meetings. Meanwhile, our Black and brown bodies continue to be assaulted. So we need Black church leaders, Black faith leaders who will attend these meetings, get involved at these high levels like the three of us are, and hold them accountable based on the communities that they serve. You know for a fact, and Pastor Lynch and Baki, you may too, being from New York, you all know that I'm not in the worst part of the Bronx. But when I go there, I have to represent the entire Bronx, because otherwise their voices go unheard. And many of those who are represented at these meetings have their faith leaders there and they're not representing them. So the accountability can only come from those who desire to make the NYPD accountable, not just anyone seeking another spot or another badge or another bullet to put on their resume. This is real work because it represents the needs of the people. So it's a strategy, Onleilove, a strategy.
Thank you so much, Doc. And I've seen you in those meetings and you truly represent the people. And now I want to, because I know he has to leave early for a family commitment, but we're grateful for him being here. I want to go to Pastor Mike McBride. And I want to ask you, Pastor Mike, what issues are on the line for Black people in this upcoming midterm election? Because often we focus on the national elections, but like our sister Joan said in the chat, you know, we have to also pay attention to the local elections as well. So what's on the line for us in these midterm elections?
Well, I want to invite you to not wait to think about the midterm elections. literally today in California, there's a recall election of the California governor.
That's very true.
Which would attempt, according to the leading Republican candidate, Larry Elder, advance him to the seat. And he has such regressive policies that it would be a nightmare, right? We should be mindful that in other states across the country, I believe Florida and a few others, Ohio, there are municipal elections where people are literally voting for mayors and city council members and school board members. Right now in the House and the Senate, there is a huge fight that we have helped to put in motion regarding the infrastructure bill and the reconciliation package that will hopefully put $5 billion, $2.5 billion in the Health and Human Services Department and $2.5 billion in the Department of Justice to fund peace, to literally fund public health, gun violence prevention strategies, so we do not have to rely on the punitiveness and the unconstitutional policing and incarceration of Black and brown people in order to achieve a better outcome of public safety. Right now, today, and for the next few weeks, we need everybody to call your elected official, call your Congress member, call your senator, tell them to vote yes on keeping fund peace or the $5 billion in the reconciliation bill. We got to get the filibuster defeated or at least reformed. Why? So we can pass the voting rights. So there's work to do between now and the midterm election. If you want to connect with us on this, please go to blackchurchpac.org or inbox us at info@blackchurchpac.org, and we can get you plugged into all the different ways that we can be engaged literally right now. We ought not wait for the midterm elections, because the midterm elections will greatly be decided as relates to process over the next 60 days. And there are pathways for us to have an outsized influence before we get into 2022. Obviously, 2022 will require a level of record turnout because we are now fighting against state-sponsored voter suppression. And so we have to be nimble. We have to be multi-directional as we attempt to push back on these new efforts. But I still believe we will win. We are a people who have yet to lose to the forces of white supremacy. Although we may experience individual defeats or setbacks as a people, we always find a way to rise because the spirit of the Most High and the wisdom of our ancestors always get us back to where we need to be. And so let's be a part of the solution. The Black Church PAC is super excited to be an asset and a resource to everyone. Name drop if you must, but come on and hang out with the Black Church PAC and let's really mobilize Black people of faith across the country. And Minister Onleilove, you know we got you. Thanks for always being a freedom fighter. Oh, she a tough one, boy. I tell folks, you don't want to get on the wrong side of Minister Onleilove. That smile go away, touch your neighbor. She got a book called Prophetic Whirlwind. That's her spirit. She didn't pick an animal, she picked a whirlwind.
Yes.
That's
God spoke to them from the whirlwind. Y'all spoke to them from the whirlwind. Thank you. Pastor Mike knows me from various organizing spaces, so I get a little feisty for our people. But Pastor Mike, before you go, thank you so much. I want you to just answer these quick questions so people can plug in. And we are dropping in the Facebook Live and on Zoom, the Black Church PAC website. You can sign up and be added to their email list. But Pastor Mike, really quick before you leave, what is one tangible action Blacks of faith should take during this political moment to ensure justice for our people? How can people connect with you and your organization? And anything else you want to say in closing? And thank you for all the wisdom you've dropped so far.
No, I think that those are great questions. I will also put in the chat, we have an action platform that is called ROCS.online, ROCS.online, Rebuilding Our Collective Strength. It comes out of a speech that Reverend Jesse Jackson gave at the Tinley Methodist Church in 1983, and he talked about rocks laying around and how the margins of our defeat are characterized by the fractures of our coalition, of our unity. And so we built a tool that allows us to unify across wherever we are and do action responses to things that are happening. Every Tuesday from 7 p.m. Eastern to 8 p.m. Eastern for the next 2 months, we will literally engage in phone banking and textathons, where you can literally just plug in with us. You don't have to, again, be a member of any kind of church, special organization. If you just want a place every week to give an hour of your time to call your elected official, make sure they hear your voice. All you have to do is literally sign up at rocks.online or look out for the memes that we'll post on our social media pages. And every week we're going to be phone banking and texting our senators and our congress members and make sure they hear from us around issues related to protecting the vote, issues related to funding peace and scaling up public health related gun violence prevention strategies. We must, in the next 60 days, ensure that our agenda is pushed forward, and we must allow Congress to hear from us so they can go into the midterm elections literally afraid to tell us no. Somebody say amen. It's one thing for these elected officials to keep telling us how they are our champions, but then when they get in the ring, they act like they in there sparring. No, I don't need you to spar when you get into the ring. I need you to knock somebody out. Somebody say amen, right? You need to knock out these racists, these white supremacists, these anti-Black politicians on the Democratic and Republican side of the aisle who continue to make Black folk across the world suffer needlessly. And so we do believe that our activism collectively together, our engagement, an hour a week can move the political process along. And we're also getting ready to launch, this will be something that I hope we can talk about perhaps in the new year. We're going to be joining efforts to talk about how do we shift the militarism industrial complex of this country. Many of us know that we are spending, I think we were just told we spent $3 trillion on the quote unquote war in Afghanistan. That's a war in Africa. Somebody say amen, right? And so what does it mean that we're spending so much money tearing up Black folks' land in another part of the world? The devil is alive. We're going to have to bust that up too. So there's a lot of work to be done, but let's just start by doing some easy lifts. Every Tuesday, 7 p.m., we'll be phone banking and texting our elected officials to ensure that they defend the vote and that they fund peace. And I think together we'll be able to make such a great impact. God bless everyone.
Thank you so much, Pastor Mike, and thank you, Black Church PAC. And let's remember what he shared about what's happening on the continent as well. Thank you so much, Pastor Mike. Look in the chat to connect, plug in. They have a lot of great resources for your faith community to plug in. And so I want to now ask you, Reverend James Lynch, we're going to go back to our regular agenda. But in the faith community, there are a great deal of immigrants. What are some of the challenges immigrants in your community face? And why should all Black people of faith take action to reform immigration in America? And so I will turn that over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. As Onleilove knows, the Buddhist Council of New York, which I'm the president of, we represent about 950,000, almost 1 million members, Buddhists here in the New York City area, on the surrounding metropolitan area. The vast majority of those happen to be from Asia. The vast majority, they're Chinese. Most of those, or a good portion of them, I say most, but a good portion of them are here unauthorized, without authorization. Everybody uses the term illegal. I don't use that term. I use the term unauthorized. They're here unauthorized. And the truth is
that nobody that Yahweh created is illegal.
There you go. There you go. That's why I say unauthorized. I say people are here unauthorized. And what's really happening, though, as the world is getting a chance to focus on this immigration issue, as the president, I had to do two things. I had to make sure that I asserted the right for the people to come into the country, while at the same time not making them subject to greater persecution. Right? It's easy for me to say, I'm going to go out there. I'm a recovering attorney, right? I'm a recovering attorney. I'm a college professor. But it's another thing to make people who are at risk of being deported and things of that nature to say, you got to do this and do that. So one of the things that we did in our community as a Buddhist collective, I felt the fierce urgency of now to make sure that we put in place things that would protect that community. So what do we mean by that? When people had to do their walks to the immigration office and facilities before pre-pandemic, we accompanied them. We got them lawyers to work with them. We set up law training modules. How could people have their statuses changed over time? Things of that nature. All of that was very important. But as a Black man in the United States, I think it's very important to make sure that we treat all people well. And I'm also mindful, I'm very mindful that there's a disparate treatment in how Black people are permitted to come into this country, whether they come from Africa or the Caribbean. So we have to be mindful that we're not all immigrating into this country similarly. And when we come into this country, we're viewed differently when we settle into the country. So my whole immigration policy is totally off the table in a way. It's a whole reform of the total way we immigrate people in this country. We need to have means by once they come into the country, they're not here to just fend for themselves. They have to be plugged into a system that's supporting them. And also the people who are here have to be supported. So they work harmoniously as one community under the banner of the Almighty. So it's a different way of looking at people, circumstances, and situations. We shouldn't be punishing people because they are the victims of circumstance. We should be embracing them and finding ways to love them and bring them in ways that we can support everybody. So that's what we're doing in the Buddhist Council. I hope that we've made a dent. I believe we do. I know that people are feeling less fearful about their circumstance and situation. And together, I know working with people like you, Onleilove, and the other people here, we can make a difference. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Reverend James Lynch. And the Interfaith Center also helped accompany people. And we need to be mindful of these issues that impact millions of Black people in this country. And so thank you so much, Reverend James. And so Baki, I want you to speak about why do Africans and African diasporans, so for those who may not know, that's African Americans, Afro-Caribbeans, Afro-Latinos, Africans in Europe, Africans in Asia, why should we all come together? Why should we all come together to build a united political movement in America today?
Thank you so much for that question. It's a great question that, I'm so happy to answer. We all have the same problem, which is like, we have to fight, we have to advocate in order to be respected, in order to have what we deserve. So it's a need for us to come together. We get to a moment where African immigrants and African who are descendants of immigrants and also Black and brown community who are in the United States, we have been so marginalized. We just can take the example of police brutality, but police brutality is one out of many injustice that we have to encounter every day. We can encounter it in the workplace, we can encounter it everywhere. So this is a time where we need to come together. This is a time where we need to be together in a political way, but not just political way. And in all like different culture, different way of bringing everybody together and advocating for ourselves. Because if you don't do it, there is no one else who can do it. So we have got in a moment where we know that we may have some difference between Africans, between Caribbeans, Asians, and African Americans, but we have got to a moment where we have to put all this aside and focus on building power for each other, empowering each other's business, empowering also each other's opportunities, while knowing that it's not gonna make you feel down, but it's the contrary, it's gonna empower you. So that's the time where we are right now.
Thank you so much, Baki. I appreciate that, putting our differences aside so that we can actually work together, because the fact of the matter is other communities put their differences aside all the time to get around tables, to carve up Africa's resources, to plan mass incarceration, to do, you know, whatever they need to do to stay in power. And so we have to put aside some differences. Keep your faith, keep what you believe. I'm keeping what I believe, but there is a time when we must come together. And so as Ecclesiastes says in the Tanakh, there's a time to embrace. And so this is a time when we need to be embracing each other across the continent and across the diaspora. So family, this is the 1 minute lightning round. I'm going to ask each of you 3 questions, and you have a minute to answer each question. And then everyone listening on Zoom, please put your questions in the chat or use the Q&A function. And everyone listening on Facebook, you can drop your questions in the live, and we will be reading out loud some questions to our panelists and answering them, and then talking about next steps. So we won't go over time, but stay on for the important part. So we're going to start with Dr. Deborah Jenkins. What is one tangible action Blacks of faith should take during this political moment to ensure justice for our people? And that question is for everyone. We'll go to Dr. Deborah, Pastor James Lynch, and then Baki. So take it away.
Okay, I think very simply, we should organize where we are and then spread that out. And I always say this, I use a model of 10. I believe if you get your 10 most active, most informed people together, and then they get 10, you've quickly gone from 10 to 100. And I believe that is so important that we develop a code, stick to the code, and then expand from there.
Thank you so much, Doc. And when you're forming a synagogue, you just need 10 as well. So thank you for that. Pastor James, how would you answer that question?
Simply, I would say that we have to look at each other with a new narrative. We've got to love each other. So I would ask that as we walk down the street and we see that person's face who is like us, we find a mini mantra in our minds and say, I love you, I respect you. So when you see the Black woman walking down the street with the baby, you look at them and say, I love you and I respect you. When you see the man carrying the groceries, you say, I love you and I respect you. So that every step you walk on God's earth is one of respect and love. And if we begin to respect each other at a granular level, then we'll begin to transform our communities so we can have those 10 people of faith that the pastor was just talking about coming together with a plan. And then we can transform our communities, our neighborhoods, and our world.
Thank you so much, Pastor James. And now we're going to go on to Baki. How would you answer that question? Oh, Baki, you're muted. If you could unmute, thank you.
Oh, sorry. I will answer it a little differently, but it comes to the same. It just to have like, how I call it, like kind of a discipline and strategy into organizing and building leadership. That's where we are. So for example, we have all seen that with police brutality again and Black Lives Matter, we have done a lot of march, but still we could have gone further in terms of changing the laws. So what we can do right now is to build the leadership. So in the future, we can make sure that we'll be leading the country, and we also have our boys' country.
Thank you so much. And now we're going, if everyone could answer the question, how can people connect with you and your organization? I've been sharing the links in both the chats throughout, but how can people connect with you and your organizations, Dr. Deborah, and then Pastor James, and then Baki?
Well, you know, I want to promote the best way to connect with me is through the links you've provided. I'm active in social media. I call myself a digital activist. So you can reach me at any of those. But I have just launched, I'm at my after school, the Sable Network TV, where we talk about everything having to do with the African diaspora. And it is a subscription-based streaming service that is seen on Roku, Amazon Fire, iOS, and Android devices. Onleilove actually has a dynamic show called The Bible Prophecy, The Bible, Africa, and Prophecy. She really sort of gets in and she starts to unpeel that onion that we've all been talking about here today. So if you're interested in contacting me, please go to sablenetwork.tv and just sign the contact form or subscribe, and we will get back to you immediately. This is very serious work and we do it collectively. Thank you for asking that question.
Thank you so much, Doc, and thank you for inviting me to be on your network. I did drop Doc's links in the chat, as well as the links to our co-sponsors. And so, Pastor James, how can people connect with you and your organization?
Fine, thank you so much. If you ever wanted to get in contact with me, you can always contact me at the Buddhist Council of New York. You can also contact me on my email address. You get to me personally. It's called lightbearer77@aol.com. Has a meaning behind that thing, lightbearer77 at aol.com. And but more importantly, I always want to leave this because this is kind of important, at least from a Buddhist perspective. Wherever you are is the sacred path you're supposed to be at. So please connect with the people in your family, in your community, reconcile with them and embrace them with love and compassion. That's where you have to start from, in your communities, in your home. If you're fractured with your home, embrace the term Onleilove said a moment ago, embrace the people who are hurting. And in that way, you'll be touching me anyway. But please touch the people who are near you first. That's what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pastor James, and thank you for all you do, and thank you, Dr. Deborah, for all you do. So, Baki, how can people connect with you and on DocuBlack? And yes, beautiful words, Pastor James, beautiful words.
Sorry, I was unmuting myself. Yeah, my personal email is mbaczo@gmail.com. So if you email me, I will answer in less than 24 hours. And for DocuBlack info, you can email info@undocublack.org, and you're probably gonna have an email back in less than 24 hours as well. Thank you so much again, Onleilove. And you know, we are here also to hear questions from the audience.
So thank you and greetings to the President of Global African Business Association, and thank you for all of your support. Now, for the audience, start dropping your questions and comments in the chat, because we will be asking open questions soon. But what I wanted to just ask is if everyone, starting with Dr. Deborah, what do you want to say in closing to those who are listening in Zoom, on Facebook, who will listen to the replay? What would you like to say in closing? Dr. Deb, Pastor James, and then Baki.
Yeah, I would like to say thank you to you for this vision, the Interfaith Center, these wonderful, wonderful panelists, Pastor James, Baki, and Pastor Mike. Thank you all. What I'd like to leave, since this is CBC week, I'd like to applaud how Congressman Gregory Meeks conducted his investigation, his hearing rather, yesterday of the Secretary of State, Blinken, because I think it's necessary that we have our eyes open. Someone said that they're an independent in the comments, and I'm gonna wrap it up. How do you work with non-Democrats? That's such a great question. I tell you, again, I draw on my Southern background. If you didn't grow up in the South, or if you didn't spend much time down there, you really have part of the clue as to the racism that's very real. And so when you come to a city like New York, you learn it in a different way. But it allows you to be able to traverse the two and work with all types of people, because you're able to tamp down your own angst and your own feelings. So I think it's possible for us all to get to the table and find that common goal around which we want to work. And you'd be surprised, Democrats are not the only ones who have interest in our people. So it can be done. It may be more difficult. So we need to just work together. And I thank you for that question. I just wanted to respond to her.
Yes, thank you so much, Doc, and Pastor James and Bach.
Sorry, had to hit the mute button. I was going to simply say this, in closing, please keep hope in your bosom. We are going to make it through. This is not happening by accident. That's the thing that I would say. And that we have a chance to change our lives in a way that we could not even imagine. I always think to myself when I pray every night, I think I am the fruition of a slave's prayer, that he or she did not know that they were going to make it through. They didn't know they were going to make it because maybe they'd only make it to 34, 35, or 40. But here I am talking to people through a magic box, something they couldn't have imagined. And in some ways, when we plant the seed, that there, I say to my son, I say, I stand on your grandfather's shoulders and you're going to stand on mine. And you're going to be able to say, Dad, I see a horizon that you could never have visioned. And in the same way, we're planting seeds for our future generations so they can look back. Servant well done. Thank you so much. And that's what I want us to be able to say. We were good, faithful servants and stewards for the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pastor James and Baki.
Yeah, I will just finish by saying that for all hardworking brothers and sisters who didn't get stimulus check or unemployment benefits, they qualify for what is called exclusive workers fund, and they can have up to 15,000. So the amount is going to be from 3,000 to 15,000. They can go to the website and then see if they will qualify. If they need help, also there are local organizations here, for example, like African Communities Together and ACS, African Communities Services, who can help. And there are they reach out to me via email also. I can redirect to them or help them fill out the form. It's easy to apply. So yeah, and thank you again. Thank you so very much, Pastor James and Sister Deborah.
Thank you so much, Baki, and for that useful information. And if you can drop the links in the chat, the Emergency Rental Assistance Program is a program funded by the Fund for Excluded Workers. You don't have to be a citizen. You can get up to a year of back rent and back utilities if you were impacted by COVID. So thank you so much for bringing that up, Baki. And now I want to open it up. I want to thank each and every panelist. Thank you for your wisdom and your inspiration. We truly appreciate it. I also want to thank the Black Church PAC, the Interfaith Center of New York, the Global African Business Association. Thank you, Akindele, for all your promotion. Also, the Nigerian American Public Affairs Committee. And so we are going to read some of the comments, but if you have a question, please drop it in the chat or use the Q&A function. I'm also going to bring up the Facebook Live. If you have a question or a comment, please drop it in the Facebook chat or in the Zoom chat now so our panelists can address it. But we have from Akindele, the president of the Global African Business Association, which is based here in America, in Cameroon, in Nigeria, in Ghana, and in Mozambique. He says, this is the president and CEO of the Global African Business Association. This dialogue is superb and on point 100%. I think it is high time to merge faith-based with our business community to push for smart public policies to impact our local urban communities, as well as our global African and Caribbean diaspora. So GABA really thinks about how do we connect urban communities in Africa for business and trade to improve the prosperity of all. So any of our panelists want to speak to that?
I think I can help out. I think it's a great idea, especially in Senegal and everywhere in West Africa, like Ghana and Nigeria. And spreading it is like empowering both, empowering the diaspora and also empowering Africa. Because think about it. China, for example, is coming to invest in Africa. If Chinese people can do it, also African Americans should be able to do it. And also, it's a great market because whatever you are selling or you are choosing to invest, you know that you may not have as much potential adversary or opponent as you would have if you are doing it here in the US or in Europe. So I feel like we have to come together and in a strategic way, and then invest in Africa, especially in real estates.
Thank you so much. Any other thoughts about President?
I would agree with Brother Mbake as well. I just want to think, I think it's crazy that we have resigned ourselves that we're supposed to separate spirituality from our everyday activities of creating business. That's a demonic thought. We should be in the business of creating situations where we're loving and compassionate, or we shouldn't be doing it. So when Brother Mbake says, that's the very nature of what we should be doing. And indeed, the question begs that. Our spirituality will lead us to a path of righteousness and treating each other and the environment in a way that it's supposed to be treated, not in the way that we've been told or the narrative we've been sold to treat it. That's my view.
Pastor James, you are on fire. You are just on fire. But you made me think about the woman in the Bible who stands as the one that we've all been told as women to be like. She's called the virtuous woman, but she was also a shrewd businesswoman. So most people only think of her in terms of aspiring to marriage, right? But not business. That is both spiritual and practical, right? Because it talks about her husband, King Lemuel. He just was able to conduct the affairs of Israel because she was holding it down on another end. She was a mentor to many. One of my mentors, Dr. Eleanor Moody Shepherd, she spends a lot of time in Ghana and in the past in Nigeria, but she supports women in their small businesses. We can all begin to do that. You know, we can all work together. And so I think it's a great question. And I think there's much that can be done and seen from a spiritual lens also.
Thank you so much. And we have a question from James Walker, who's a member of Global African Business Association. Welcome, James, and shalom to you. So he said, I'm politically independent. Please provide an example of how you work with non-Democrats. So the Black Church PAC works with people, even if they are not Democratic. As far as getting souls to the polls, it's not like you get a ride if you're voting for a Democrat. No. It's just about getting Black people to the polls, and then you vote for who you want to vote for. GABA works across the political spectrum. Actually, we work in great conjunction with the Nigerian American Public Affairs Committee, but we work across the spectrum, but it has to be a candidate that is very clearly in the interest of Africa and her children. So, that's the only preclude. And then NAPAC, again, they endorse the candidates they want to endorse, but I'm going to also open it up to the panelists. I know personally your work, but how do you work with non-Democrats in your work? And we can start with Baki and then go to Pastor James and Doc.
I see myself as a Democrat, and also I can work with other like non-Democrat. I can, because think about it. If you come back also to the etymology of Republican and Democrat, I know it's a big thing here, but Democrat means like for the community, and Republicans also means doing action for the public, like which come back to the community. So if we put the community's need, like the people's need first, then we can work together. But if we take principles that's mostly white supremacists, then we cannot work together.
Yes, and so you're basically saying you'll work with anyone, but it can't be, connected to white supremacy. So no, that makes sense. And Pastor James?
Well, it's the two different things. With my faith tradition, I would say work with all people. I have, on my personal political ideology, I'm unapologetically Black in that context. I will work with anybody who will stop people from being raped in prisons. I take it for real. I don't keep it real. When they incarcerated Black people for foolishness and 3 strikes and you're out, that's what happened. Generations of us were incarcerated unjustly. Our communities were disinvested in. And so anybody who's going to help with that process of reconciliation, redemption, and love being built in our community, I'm going to work with. And to support Brother Mbaki's position, obviously anybody, white supremacy, as we understand in the dialogue we're saying right now, means to be destructive of our community. So we have to avoid that at all costs. So that's what I would say.
Thank you. And
Yes.
Doc?
Yes, yes. As I was alluding to before, you have to find that core thing, agenda item that is shared between you and a non-Democrat. They are there. It is there. I think Sister Joan, who had been commenting a lot, she talked about how she has had occasion where she's voted Republican. And certainly there are many of us who have done, who've thought to, certainly not today. I don't know what they are today, but certainly in the past, there have been those who have had the similar views as I'm more conservative in my personal piety, right? However, like you said, James, there are just issues out there that I don't compromise on as it relates to Black bodies and also brown bodies, who I believe are an extension of us, right? So there are those common things, and it's usually around personal piety. However, let's be clear when we align ourselves with people who sound like they share our values, but they truly don't. So I think you can sit down and you spend a little time with those people, and you'll really get to see if there's someone that you even want to work with, because it could be more of a hindrance than an assist.
Yes, and over the course of my career, I have organized clergy from across the spectrum, but we have to have issues that we're coming together on. It has to be a common issue. If I'm believing Africa should not be, debt in Africa should be forgiven, and you believe it shouldn't, then, and that's my campaign, then we can't work together. But many of the organizations work across the spectrum. So, that is definitely true. Great question, James. And Joan did bring up how important state elections are. Many people are frustrated about various mandates, but these same people don't pay attention to city and statewide elections. And that is deciding, will your child have to wear a mask in school or not? And I'm not giving opinions about the mandates, but what I'm saying is many of us complain when things get passed at the city and state level, but when it's time to vote at those levels, we don't care. We only care about the national election. So do any of you want to speak? And really quick, and we have to wrap up, speak to the importance of paying attention to the local politics in your area.
If I might, just quickly, I think it's even more important. I think that was a dialogue I was trying to have with Joan also. The state and local elections are more important because they affect us daily. Rezoning, land use, the utilities. We're all in the state of New York, and Con Edison has the utilities locked down statewide. These are the discussions we need to have with our locally elected officials from the, and let's not forget the district leaders. They're very influential. They have a lot of clout with our city council people, our state assembly, our state senators. Let's not forget all of them, and the board of election people. They are appointees from each of the political parties, right? So we need to engage civically, but starting on the local level so that we can be more informed. And when we go into a national election, then we have power of support, and our voices really matter because we've been paying attention all along the way.
All I have to do is say amen. That's it. She said amen.
Yes, and so amen. And so please pay attention to what's happening locally. Please work across the African diaspora, embrace each other. And thank you to our panelists. Thank you to the Global African Business Association, to Nigerian American Public Affairs Committee, to One Voice, to the Interfaith Center of New York, to Black Church PAC. We've been dropping links in the Facebook and Zoom, so I hope you will connect. sign up for the Black Church PAC newsletter. Business owners and businesses can join the Global African Business Association and take part. NAPAC works with all of us. I am part of NAPAC New York, and they actually got a lot of people elected this year, and also helped with Reverend Warnock a great deal. And so we thank everyone for being on, and we want to just remind everyone to stay vigilant and to stay rooted in our faith. We thank everyone who during the workday took the time to be on. The replay will be on the Interfaith Center of New York's Facebook, so you can share with those who cannot be on live. Connect with the speakers, connect with the organizations, follow their work, stay in touch, and get involved. And so with that, again, I want to say thank you and shalom. And I'm going to turn it over to Pastor James Lynch to lead us in a closing blessing.
Okay. This is a little different. I'm actually going to give words of respect to everyone here and to all their ancestors. I am extremely grateful. I wrote out some things as I was listening. These are called words of respect, and this is what frequently in my tradition, in Risha Sakai, we do. I'm extremely grateful to Pastor Jenkins, Pastor McBride, Brother Bake, to all the organizers of this historic gathering, in person and online. And I do want to single out the Global African Business Association, the Nigerian American Public Affairs Committee, the Interfaith Center of New York, and especially the Black Church PAC. Indeed, we don't need Cape Crusaders, for we have these organizations like the Black Church PAC and all that they do for the people in the US, in the Pan-African diaspora and the world. And I also want to take time out to thank Minister Onleilove for reaching out to me and for providing with an opportunity to offer these words of respect and support as a Buddhist practitioner to all of you. Indeed, many of the speakers skillfully and graciously mentioned today that we're brought together during a time of great change and chaos and seemingly ever increasing uncertainty. And we cry out and ask the Almighty why. Tellingly, indeed, whether it is violence at home, poverty overseas, reconciliation with our historical past, current social and political unrest, random attacks on our Asian and Pacific Islander brothers and sisters, floods, famines, COVID here in the United States, in Africa, or around the world, the cry is heard, why? And that the answer to me to that cry is as clear as the scriptures as to why. The Almighty is certainly seeking our attention to get us to listen. For without deep listening, true love for ourselves and love for our people is not possible. And the Almighty is requesting a new relationship, one based upon a greater understanding of the gift of life that the Almighty has given us, and a new commitment to stand guard and firm at the doors of our sacred covenants with God, and finally, a willingness to see in the eyes of the other the Almighty's divine plan. This is true whether we are seeking justice for Black men and women from Senegal, seeking justice in immigration policy in the US, police reimagining here in US, in the New York City area where I'm speaking to you, or need for us to focus on lovingly but unapologetically Black political movements. And we must be mindful of the requirement to see in the eyes of others God's grace. They aren't here by accident, but on purpose of the Almighty. So mindful of the Almighty's plan to embrace each other, I say thank you to all of you, and that this is a beautiful time for us to come together in collective reflection, remembrance of the connection to our ancient roots, wherever we currently may be in the diaspora, to embrace with the powerful elixir of hope, the reimagining of our new world of possibilities through the gathering today, through our ancient true North principles. So we come together to all those who are suffering, to come to America, all those who seek peace around the world so they can assert their humanity, dignity, and remember their sacred walk. In the words of the most sacred Shakyamuni Buddha, we're not born as saints, we become saints by our deeds. It isn't what we say we might do, we're going to do, but what we do. I would humbly suggest to all of you that your deeds and efforts here today by participating in this activity on Zoom, through the internet, in an interfaith way is an act of a saint or doing saintly acts. We must remember we can never move faster than the speed of trust. So today we're using our bodies and minds to lovingly and trustingly help each other. To me, the Almighty has ordained that each of you is a lighthouse. And the lighthouse often doesn't know how many ships that a tiny beam of it will stop a ship from crashing into disaster. As the Buddha commands, we must make ourselves the light and the truth the light, and let that light be a hopeful light for others. Finally, let us pray that thy will be done, not our will, thy will. And that the great life force in and through the universe, whom we devoutly revere and often call by different names, the Buddha, Bodhisattvas, saints of all faiths, and countless heavenly beings who are omnipresent in the 10 directions, will watch over our peaceful steps today in whatever way they can, and extend their hands of compassion and guidance and beckon forth peace in our local areas, our various countries, and to the world. We also pray that the world of all living beings will find peace. Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. September the 14th, James Lynch, Buddhist practitioner. I have respectfully and sincerely offer these words of respect to all of you. Thank you.
Amen. Amen. Thank
you. Amen. Thank you, everyone, and may you go with shalom. Thank you so much, Pastor James,
Thank you.
for those beautiful words.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Be safe.
Be
Bye.
safe.
Have a good night.
Shalom.